Hello, William. I just watched your video and thought that I would make a video response to just to open up the discussion better than writing comments that get confused or something like that. So I just wanted to make a video in response to um, facilitate discussion on um, on like these kind of topics and stuff. So yeah, it's good to see um, your video and stuff, and um, yeah. So I just made a few notes of like some different points that I thought I'd add like to what you're talking about. Um, a lot of it's coming from the Swedenborgian perspective, coming from Emanuel Swedenborg, who I'm still studying, and yeah, I'd like to have a catch up with you properly, but I'll just do this sort of thing for the video. Um, so yeah, so the Supersoul and yeah, the relationship to the Supersoul, um, or God, and um, yeah, I've sort of made notes just as I listened to your talk, so it's sort of a little bit random, but I don't know if you'll be able to figure out what notes went to which part of the video. Um, um, the first point I was thinking is the idea of interior thought, which Swedenborg actually talks about different layers of thought. You have more external layers of thought and then more interior layers of thought and stuff. Um, yeah, I probably should have made more notes for this, but when you were talking about channeling, Swedenborg actually has an interesting thing that he talks about. What he calls it is influx. So influx is the name for the way that heaven, like what he says is that we're always connected to either heaven or hell. Um, like spiritually, we're connected. We're like a part of us is existing in that realm already, and we have what he calls influx, which means depending on the consciousness of the individual, there'll be like influx either from like hellish societies in hell or from heavenly societies, and that causes a type of like it doesn't give you directly the thoughts like exactly what the thoughts are, but it gives you like a quality of those of the types of thoughts that an individual like has. It kind of so yeah, and he also talks about that you can contact individual spirits and stuff like that in terms of channeling. Um, like that can happen. There can be spirits that will come in and communicate with a person and stuff, and they're meant to follow sort of spiritual law when they do that. But yeah, so like that's the general name that he gives for like when you're having that inflow that's coming into your thinking and stuff, and you're getting these other ideas. Like ultimately it is coming from the Lord, and it's coming, if it's coming from the heavenly societies, then that's associated with the Lord, and so you could say it's sort of coming through the super soul. But there's also there's a complexity to it as well, because you can connect to individual spiritual societies that have different orientations or different aspects of truth. So the truth is like a myriad, like there's just infinite numbers of different types of truth, and tapping into different aspects of them. Yeah, so different societies, and yeah, but yeah, the super soul, it is like essentially it's like the super soul connecting through. Um, yeah, I was gonna say a really good teacher that I've found, or modern philosophical thinker, is Ken Wilber, and like you might be interested in having a look at some of his stuff, because it's really good. What he talks about is like this type of integral consciousness, which is sort of descending on the planet, and there's all these like people that are joined together in this kind of integral network and integral philosophy and stuff, um, which like it's a must. Like you should really have a look if you haven't already. Like to understand the integral model is really important, especially the four quarters, because he has like four quarters that you have an I quarter, which is your inner state subjective, and then you've got a we quarter, which is transpersonal between each other state or cultural, and then you've got the external of the we, which is the political systems, economic systems, the various external ways that we join together as a collective, and then the external of the interior subjective states, which relates to different parts of the brain, which is the external of those subjective states, and understanding how one point on any one of those you can draw a circle around and join up to see how all those different quarters are all related to each other, which is real good for integral thinking, because it makes sense of the whole picture. Not if the tendency is to put more emphasis on the external environment in our culture and stuff, and it hasn't paid much attention to actually transpersonal domains and subjective and like spiritual states and stuff like that. But also vice versa, that if you're too focused on just the subjective or transpersonal, that you can get a little bit left out of the external way, and understanding how all of that fits into the greater picture, So it's a real big picture kind of thinking thing. The integral model, integral philosophy and stuff, and there's a big group of like all these visionaries and stuff all joined together. There's like some sites, the consciouscollective.com or integrallife.com, and yeah, so they're really good. I might have to check out Lilu as well, that you were talking about. So one of the things that Ken Wilber talks about that sort of makes sense of this different like, I agree with you that the like Achincha Beda Beda Tattva, like from Chaitanya, that I think that is like the high sort of conception as well. But Ken Wilber makes a good point about understanding, like you can actually understand why you get these different points of view is dependent on your it's the person. So like what Ken Wilber explains is that this first person experience of spirit, then there's second person experience of spirit, and then there's third person experience of spirit. And this relates to those quadrants of I, we, and it. So when it is the name for the two exterior quadrants, and then so when you have I, an I experience of spirit is in a subjective experience of spirit, or the Supersoul from the inside out, which gives that quality of I am God, and I agree with the Vaishnava term that's like what they call Brahman realization, which is like I am God in the energy of God. So that's that experience of the qualitatively one with aspect, and then in the second person, so second person is then in relationship to and then in relationship to God, it's like um, I am a servant of God, because that's the in reality we're servants of Him, like in the sense that we're Jiva Atmas and He is the Supersoul, and that's just the way that things are. Swedenborg also has heaps to offer in understanding how this actually happens on different levels, that a person moves from a more externalized, ego-centered into closer to God. But how he explains it is that what the Lord does is He gives us the feeling that we have life of our own. So He gives us the feeling that we're actually individuals, in order to actually have that relationship, sort of, so that we can be regenerated or become spiritual beings. Because if we didn't feel that it was us that was doing it, or actually, yeah, if we didn't feel it was us that was doing it, then it wouldn't actually occur. So yeah, so like he sort of explains, it's like that funny thing with the self, that becoming more, recognizing more and more that yourself is, that it is God in you. And yeah, but I was going to make a point about that later. Just yeah, with the first and the second person is in that relationship as the servant, and that gives the personal conception where everything is personal. So everything's in relationship, everything's personal, everything's personified. And then moving around to the it quadrant, then you have the that's more when you observe the way that things are. It's like an observation of experience of itness as it unfolds. It's just the itness itself, and like you could just observe nature or something, and and just watch nature, like if you did a zazen meditation or something like that, or you could watch your own feelings and own thoughts as they unfold and just observe them unfolding, and this is the experience of the it, because it's just as it's happening. And the other, yeah, in relation to God, like that's contemplating or thinking about God. So one is thinking from the I am sort of thing, and then one is thinking to God, like talking to Him, and then the other one is like about Him. But what Ken Wilber says, which sort of helps in this understanding all of this, so you don't end up saying, oh, one's worse or one's better or whatever. Like he says that all three are actually important to have the complete sort of conception, or like that all three are yeah, like he recommends doing meditations from all three of them. But even if you are just focused on a particular type of meditation or whatever, I think the benefit of the integral model is that it's given us like a good way of appreciating all the different perspectives, so that you can appreciate why a Buddhist is saying the things that they're saying. Like they might be more centered on the it or something like that, and they're saying these things, and if you're too just locked in the we or something, just in the personal conception, then it seems to be like a strange thing that they're saying. But then if you understand, well, they're just different, we're just looking from different angles at the same Supersoul, at the same truth, then we can see that that's valid, and then we don't, obviously, then we can all just work together to actually come up with like a complete, and help with the evolution of consciousness and the evolution of proper conceptions and stuff like that, a global worldview, and yeah. So that was just one of the things that I want to talk about in relation to that. So, oh yeah, you said something about angels. That's interesting that these people were saying two angels, because actually Swedenborg says that we do have two personal angels. Like two is actually the number that he says that we have with us. We have two angels that accompany us, and two devils as well. Um, and But you have to understand that an angel or a devil is like a man, is a person who's gone to heaven or hell, and then angel or devil is the name which is given to them existing in. But what Swedenborg says is that all angels were once men, and the same so for devils. So, but yeah, they're ones that are like, that work with us, and they can, through that principle of influx, you can get stuff from the spiritual world or influx from the Lord, also shared through the angels and stuff like that. I don't really know all that much about it, but it's just interesting. I just thought I'd mention that Swedenborg does actually talk about angels and that conception. Um, yeah, so coming back to the like self thing or whatever, like in relation to God, like with the individuality aspect. So amazing thing that Swedenborg talks about is that as we approach God um, and become closer and closer to Him, the more one feels that actually their interior thought and um, their actions or their good works, like all of their actions and everything, um, is yeah, like the Lord in me does the good works or whatever. Like, so the it's actually the Lord in the person. Yet at the same time, as they come closer, they feel more and more that they are actually an individual. So it's like an individualization as approaching what seems like, well, what is actually more of a oneness. So it is actually the Achincha Beta Tattva in a way, isn't it? Because it's simultaneous, it's oneness because the Lord is in you more, and but it's difference because you're defined more as an individual actually closer that you get. So yeah, I think I've been realizing, I've been thinking a bit about um, some of the things with the Vaishnava perspective and stuff. You're getting kind of like the highest. Um, Sometimes it seems like you get just like a little bit of what needs to be fluffed out, like a more complete conception. You need to understand all the layers in between, not just necessarily what the highest thing is, but also what are all the stages in between and what goes. How do we get into like one big field where we can see like the whole picture and all the stages that need to be gone through, and how does it work in more of a kind of fluid model rather than just it's only like this or it's only like that, and get into it more. And also yeah, the creativity is one of the things that Ken Wilber has been putting a lot of emphasis on, which he calls intentionality. So that's like seems like a really interesting thing to look at or get into, is understanding the actual creative process and how the creative aspect comes out or unfolds within us, and how that has an impact. Or what he explains is that it sort of like lays down the kind of structures and things that people after us will follow. So by connecting at a higher level, we're actually laying down structures of a higher, like if we're communicating with each other, then that's in the we quadrant, and it's actually laying down higher transpersonal models so that the people after us have more ease of getting into that, or they even might start at that level or whatever. So it's like really interesting. But that was all that I just wanted to talk about in relation to your video. But I'll be keen to come on and have a discussion um, person to person. So yeah, it's been good. Okay,